The sky above the Sara Prime had turned orange. Not the warm orange of sunset, but the terrible orange of fire falling from space. High Arbiter Solon stood at the observation window of her orbital command station and watched her world die. Below her, the great coastal city of Ven was burning. Millions of her people lived there. Millions of gentle souls who had never raised a weapon in their lives. The Velnori were not warriors. They were artists, philosophers, healers. They believed in peace and kindness. They believed that the galaxy would protect them. If they ever faced danger, they had been wrong. The HFY warships moved across the sky like a swarm of metal insects. There were hundreds of them. Each one was bristling with weapons that could level mountains. They had arrived 3 days ago with a simple demand: surrender your world, or watch it burn. The Velnor had refused. They had called for help from the Galactic Council, the great alliance of species that was supposed to maintain peace in the galaxy. They had begged and pleaded and sent message after message. The Council had sent back one reply. They were sorry, but the HFY Dominion was too powerful. Starting a war with them would cost too many lives. The Velnor would have to solve this problem on their own. Solon had wept when she read that message. Her people had been members of the Council for 2,000 years. They had donated resources, shared technology, and helped other species whenever they could. And now, when they needed help the most, they were being abandoned. Admiral Vex, her military commander, approached her with a grim expression on his face. Silver skin had turned pale with stress, and his large eyes were filled with exhaustion. High Arbiter, our defense fleet has been destroyed. We have only 12 ships remaining, and they are all damaged. The HFY are demanding our surrender within the hour, or they will begin attacking civilian evacuation transports. Solon closed her eyes. She could not let her people see her cry. She was their leader. She had to be strong, even when there was no hope left. "How many have we evacuated?" she asked. "Perhaps 2 million. Out of 8 billion? 2 million? It was nothing. A drop of water in an ocean of lives that were about to be lost. The HFY would enslave those who survived. They would strip her world of its resources. Everything the Velnori had built over thousands of years would be erased. There must be something we can do," Solon whispered. "Some ally we have not contacted. Some weapon we have not tried." Admiral Vex hesitated. "There is one thing, but it is probably useless." Solon turned to look at him. "Tell me. In our deep archives, we have a collection of ancient artifacts, relics from species that have come and gone over the millennia. One of them is a beacon. It was found 300 years ago on a derelict station at the edge of the Silent Zone. The Silent Zone. Every species in the galaxy knew about it. A vast region of space that was marked on every star chart with the same warning: do not enter. Ships that went in never came out. Nobody knew what was inside, and nobody wanted to find out." "What does the beacon do?" Solon asked. "We do not know for certain. It has markings on it that no living species can read. But our archivists found one phrase written in an ancient form of galactic standard. It says 4 emergencies only. Humanity remembers its friends." Solon frowned. "Humanity? I have never heard of that species. Neither had our archivists. They searched every database in the Council. Humanity appears in a few scattered records from 10,000 years ago, but the entries are incomplete. Some say they were warriors. Others say they were peacekeepers. All the records agree on one thing. They are gone. Extinct. They sacrificed themselves to stop something called the Hollow Swarm." "Then the beacon is useless," Solon said bitterly. "We cannot ask the dead for help." "Probably not," Admiral Vex agreed. "But we have tried everything else. Every ally has refused us. Every weapon has failed. If there is even the smallest chance that something out there will answer, is it not worth trying?" Solon looked back at the burning world below. Another city had started to glow with the light of orbital bombardment. How many more would burn before this was over? "Activate the beacon," she said. "Activate everything we have. Send our distress call in every direction, on every frequency. If there is anyone in this galaxy willing to help us, let them hear our cry." Admiral Vex bowed and left to carry out her orders. Deep in the archives of the orbital station, A team of technicians gathered around a small metal cylinder. It was old. Incredibly old. The metal was scarred and pitted from centuries of storage, but the symbols carved into its surface still glowed faintly with an inner light. The lead technician, a young Velnori named Keth, placed his hand on the activation panel. He did not expect anything to happen. This was probably just an ancient piece of junk from a dead civilization. But orders were orders. He pressed the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the beacon began to hum. The symbols on its surface flared bright white, so bright that Keth had to shield his eyes. A pulse of energy shot out from the device. Passing through the walls of the station like they were not there, the pulse traveled at speeds that should have been impossible. It crossed light years in seconds, racing toward the silent zone like a bullet fired from a gun. It passed through the warning beacons that marked the boundary of forbidden space. It penetrated the strange interference field that blocked all sensors and communications, and deep within the silent zone, inside a hollowed-out moon that had been dark for 10,000 years, something received the signal. Lights began to flicker on. They spread through corridors that had been silent since before the Velnor had discovered fire. Computer systems that had been in hibernation mode for millennia began their startup sequences. Power cores that had been cold and still began to warm. In a vast chamber filled with thousands of cryogenic pods, frost began to melt from glass windows. The faces behind that glass were strange. Soft skin instead of scales or chitin. Hair on their heads in various colors, one facing like predators. Humans. On the bridge of a massive warship called the Argent Dawn, screens came to life.
Ow.
Data scrolled across displays that had been dark for longer than most civilizations had existed. A computerized voice echoed through the empty corridors, calm and precise. Priority alert received. Allied species in distress. Coordinates locked. Threat assessment indicates hostile military action against protected population. Protocol 7 is now active. Wakening the 8th Fleet. More lights came on. In the darkness around the hollowed moon, shapes began to emerge. Ships. Dozens of them. Warships with angular hulls and weapons that the modern galaxy had never seen. They had been waiting here, silent and patient, for this exact moment. The computer spoke again. Admiral Chen, your presence is required on the bridge. Repeat, Admiral Chen. Please report to the bridge. Humanity has been called. It is time to answer. In her cryogenic pod, a woman with black hair and a stern face began to open her eyes for the first time in 10,000 years. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. But humanity had never forgotten its promises, and somewhere, burning and desperate and alone, the Velnori were about to learn that some friends never truly leave. They just wait until they are needed. Admiral, no. Chen opened her eyes and saw nothing but white light. Her body felt like it was made of ice. Every muscle ached. Yes. Her lungs burned as they took their first breath in 10,000 years. The cryogenic pod hissed open, and cold mist poured out around her. She tried to move, but her arms would not obey. This was normal. The medical briefings had warned her about this. After long-term cryosleep, the body needed time to remember how to function. A mechanical arm extended from the side of the pod and injected something into her neck. Warmth spread through her veins. Feeling returned to her fingers and toes. She gasped and sat up, nearly falling out of the pod onto the metal floor. Admiral Chen, the computer voice said, "Your vital signs are stabilizing. You have been in cryogenic sleep for 10,427 years. Please remain calm. Medical assistance is on the way." 10,000 years. Yuna had known this was possible when she agreed to the mission. The 8th Fleet had been designed to sleep until they were needed. They were humanity's final promise to the galaxy. A promise that help would always come for those who deserved it, but 10,000 years was longer than she had expected. Around her, other pods were opening. She could hear coughing and groaning as her crew woke from their long sleep. Some of them had been her friends. Some had been strangers. Now they would all have to work together to complete a mission in a galaxy that had moved on without them. 2 hours later, Yuna stood on the bridge of the Argent Dawn. She was wearing her uniform again. Her hair was tied back in its usual tight bun. Her crew had assembled at their stations. They all looked pale and shaken, but they were ready for duty. "Computer," she said, "show me the distress signal." A holographic display appeared in front of her. It showed a star system she did not recognize, with a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow sun. Red markers indicated hostile ships, hundreds of them, surrounding the planet like wolves around wounded prey. "The signal originated from this world," the computer explained. "It is called the Sarah Prime. The species that sent the distress call are the Velnor. They are a peaceful civilization with no significant military capability. They are currently under attack by the Kethver Dominion, a militaristic empire that has conquered 47 star systems in the past 3 centuries. Una studied the display with cold eyes. The Velnor. Why do I know that name? The Velnor were among the species that assisted humanity during the Hollow Swarm crisis. When Earth was destroyed and our people were scattered across the galaxy, the Velnori took in over 50,000 human refugees. They gave them shelter, food, and protection. They raised human children as their own when their parents did not survive. Una felt something tighten in her chest. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell. Stories about a kind species with silver skin and gentle voices who had saved her life when she was just a child. "My great-grandmother was one of those refugees," Una said quietly. "That is correct, Admiral. The Velnor have always been listed as a protected species under Protocol 7. They earned humanity's eternal gratitude." Una turned to her crew. They were watching her, waiting for orders. Some of them were afraid. That was understandable. They had just woken up in a galaxy that had forgotten they existed. They were about to fly into battle against an enemy they knew nothing about. But they were human, and humans did not abandon their friends. "All hands prepare for departure," Una commanded. "Navigation, plot a course for the Sarah Prime. Maximum speed. We have a debt to repay." The 8th Fleet came to life around her. 32 warships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. They had been built in the final years before humanity went into hiding, designed with technology that was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. The galaxy had changed in 10,000 years. But human technology had been designed to last. The ships were still functional. The weapons were still deadly. And the crew was ready to fight. As the fleet began to move, Una accessed the historical archives. She needed to understand what had happened while they were sleeping. The computer showed her records from the first few centuries after humanity's disappearance. Species had mourned them. Monuments had been built. Humanity was remembered as heroes who had given everything to stop the Hollow Swarm. But as the centuries passed, the memory had faded. New generations grew up knowing nothing about the strange, soft-skinned creatures who had once walked among the stars. The monuments crumbled. The records were lost or deleted. Eventually, humanity became nothing more than a legend. A myth. A story that parents told their children to teach them about sacrifice. Some species even denied that humanity had ever existed. Una felt a strange sadness as she read these records. Her people had died to save the galaxy, and the galaxy had forgotten them. But she pushed that feeling aside. There would be time for grief later. Right now, there was work to do. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported. "Long-range sensors are detecting the Kethver fleet. They have over 300 warships in orbit around the Zara Prime. Their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than pre-cryogenic projections." "More advanced than us?" Una asked. The tactical officer checked his readings again. "No, Admiral. Not even close." Una allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had spent the last 1,000 years of their existence preparing for the worst. They had built weapons and defenses that could handle any threat. The Kethver might think they were powerful. They were about to learn otherwise. Meanwhile, far away on the bridge of his flagship, Kethver High Commander Vross was receiving strange reports. His communications officer looked nervous as he approached the command throne. "High Commander, our deep space sensors are detecting movement in the silent zone." Vross turned his massive head. His species was reptilian, with thick scales and sharp teeth. They had evolved from pack hunters, and they had never lost their taste for conquest. The Silent Zone. Nothing lives in the Silent Zone. It has been empty for millennia. Yes, High Commander. But our sensors are picking up energy signatures. Multiple contacts. They are moving at speeds that should not be possible. Ross stood up and walked to the sensor display. He stared at the readings with growing confusion. The contacts were big, very big, and they were heading directly toward this Sarah Prime.
What are they?
He demanded. Unknown, High Commander. The signatures do not match any species in our database. Their design is completely unfamiliar, but they are heavily armed, and they are not responding to any communication attempts. Ross felt something he had not felt in a very long time. It was a cold sensation in his stomach. His ancestors would have called it fear. How long until they arrive? At their current speed, approximately 6 hours. 6 hours. Ross turned back to the observation window and looked at the burning planet below. His fleet was the largest and most powerful force that Kethvert had ever assembled. They had conquered entire civilizations without breaking a sweat. But something was coming. Something from the Silent Zone, from the forbidden region of space that everyone knew to avoid. Something that was flying toward them with terrible purpose. And for the first time in his long career of conquest, High Commander Ross wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. High Arbiter Solon had made peace with death. She sat in her command chair on the orbital station and watched the Kethver fleet tighten its grip around her world. There was no escape. No rescue. No hope. Her people would die and she would die with them. She had sent one final message to her people an hour ago. She had told them to hide their art, their music, their stories. She had told them to bury their history deep underground, where the Kethver would never find it. If the Velnori could not survive, then at least their culture might live on in some hidden place. Admiral Vex stood beside her. His face was calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes. They had served together for 20 years. He had always been loyal. He deserved better than this. The beacon, Solon said quietly. Did it do anything? Vex shook his head. We detected a burst of energy when it activated. The signal traveled toward the Silent Zone, but there has been no response. I am sorry, High Arbiter. I should not have given you false hope. Solon was about to reply when the tactical officer suddenly jumped up from her station. Her silver skin had gone pale and her hands were shaken. I am detecting multiple contacts exiting faster than light travel. They are appearing directly between us and the Kethver fleet. Solon stood up. Show me. The main view screen changed to show the space between the orbital station and the enemy fleet. At first, there was nothing but stars. Then the stars began to move. No, that was wrong. The stars were not moving. Something was appearing in front of them. Ships. Black ships, with angular holes and silver markings that glowed in the darkness. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, spreading out across the void like a crescent moon made of metal and fire. There were 32 of them, and each one was larger than any warship Solon had ever seen. By the ancestors, Admiral Vex breathed. What are those? The tactical officer was frantically scanning the strange fleet. Unknown configuration. Unknown weapon systems. Unknown power signatures? I have never seen anything like this. Wait, they are transmitting on an open channel. A voice filled the bridge. It was a female voice, speaking Galactic Standard with an accent that no living species had used in 10,000 years. Attention all vessels. This is Admiral Yuna Chen of the human 8th Fleet. The system of the Sara. Prime and the Velnori people are under our protection. To the Kethver Dominion forces currently in this system, you have 1 standard hour to withdraw. There will be no second warning. Silence fell across the bridge. Solon felt her legs grow weak. She grabbed the arm of her chair to keep from falling. Humans, she whispered. The beacon. It actually worked. On the Kethver flagship, High Commander Vross was not impressed. He had heard legends about the humans, of course. Every species had. But legends were just stories. These newcomers might have impressive ships, but they were outnumbered 15-1. Open a channel to the human vessel, he commanded. A moment later, Admiral Chen's face appeared on his view screen. She was small, with soft skin and dark hair and eyes that held no fear. Ross almost laughed. This was the legendary species that had supposedly saved the galaxy. She looked like prey. Human, Ross said. You do not seem to understand your situation. I have 300 warships. You have 32. Even if your technology is superior, mathematics does not favor you. Withdraw now, and I will allow you to leave with your lives. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. High Commander, I am going to give you one piece of advice. Take your fleet and leave. Not because you will lose, you will. But because if you stay, I will have to do something that I would prefer not to do. Vross showed his teeth in a predator's grin. And what would that be? I will have to embarrass you. The channel closed. Vross stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his tactical officer with fury in his eyes. All ships, attack formation. Destroy those vessels. Leave none alive. 300 Kethfer warships moved forward, their weapons charged with deadly energy. Missiles locked onto targets. Fighters launched from carrier bays like swarms of angry insects. The human fleet did not move. They simply waited, floating in the void like statues carved from. Darkness, the first wave of Kethfer ships, reached weapons range and opened fire. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked through space toward the human vessels. Vross watched with satisfaction. In moments, these arrogant newcomers would be nothing but debris. Then something impossible happened. The weapons fire stopped. Not deflected. Not destroyed. Just stopped. The plasma bolts froze in place, hanging in space like drops of water suspended in time. The missiles shut down and went dark, drifting harmlessly between the fleets. What is happening? Ross demanded. Why are our weapons not working? I do not know, High Commander. Our systems are functioning normally. The weapons are firing. But something is neutralizing them before they can reach the targets. Ross felt that cold fear again. He pushed it down and gave another order. Send in the destroyers. Close to boarding range. If we cannot shoot them, we will tear them apart with our bare hands. 20 Kethper destroyers accelerated toward the human fleet. They were crewed by the finest warriors in the Dominion. They had boarded and captured hundreds of enemy ships. They had never failed. As they approached the human vessels, the destroyers began to slow down. Then they stopped completely. Then, one by one, their lights went out. High Commander, the tactical officer said, his voice trembling, the destroyers are not responding. Their power cores have shut down. Life support is failing. The crews are reporting that all systems have gone offline. Ross stared at the drifting destroyers. His best ships, his finest warriors, they had been disabled without a single shot being fired. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the view screen again. She looked exactly as calm as before. High Commander, as I said, your technology cannot match ours. Your numbers cannot help you. Every ship you send against us will suffer the same fate. Your crews are not dead, but they will need rescue soon before their life support fails completely. I suggest you focus on saving your own people instead of killing innocent ones. Ross could not speak. His entire worldview was crumbling. The Kethfer had built their empire on the belief that strength meant victory. More ships meant more power. More power meant conquest. But these humans did not play by those rules. They did not need to. They had evolved beyond the simple calculus of numbers and weapons. They could reach out across space and simply turn off enemy ships like blowing out a candle. What do you want? Vross finally asked. I want you to leave. I want you to return every piece of territory you have stolen from the Velnor. I want you to pay for the damage you have caused. And I want you to remember something very important. Chen leaned forward, and for the first time, Vross saw something dangerous in her eyes. Oh. The galaxy forgot about us. That was a mistake. We are back now, and we will be watching. Every species that preys on the weak, every empire that conquers the innocent, every tyrant who thinks power gives them the right to hurt others, we will be watching. And if we do not like what we see, we will come for you. Not with warnings, not with negotiations. We will simply end you. Do you understand? Ross understood. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what fear meant. I will withdraw, he said. Good. You have 2 hours. Do not make me wait. The channel closed. And on the bridge of her orbital station, High Arbiter Solon fell to her knees and wept with joy. The humans had come, and her people would live. The Kethfer fleet retreated. High Commander Vross ordered his ships to collect the disabled destroyers and withdraw to the edge of the system. He did not try to negotiate. He did not make threats. He simply obeyed, because he had seen what the humans could do. And he knew that fighting them was impossible. For the first time in 300 years, the Kethfer Dominion had surrendered without firing a successful shot. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. A species thought to be extinct for 10,000 years had returned. They had appeared from the Silent Zone, defeated an entire invasion fleet without casualties, and saved a civilization from destruction. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings. News networks broadcast the story on every channel. Species that had never heard of humanity began searching their archives for any information about these mysterious newcomers. Admiral Yuna Chen ignored all of it. She had more important things to do. A shuttle carried her from the Argent Dawn to the Velnori orbital station. She walked through corridors filled with exhausted Velnor, who stared at her with wide eyes. Some of them reached out to touch her uniform, as if they could not believe she was real. Others simply stood aside and bowed their heads in gratitude. High Arbiter Solon met her at the entrance to the command. The Velnor leader looked like she had not slept in days. Her silver skin was dull with exhaustion, and her eyes were red from crying. But she stood tall as she faced the human admiral. Thank you, Solon said. That seems like such a small word for what you have done. But I do not know what else to say. You saved my people? You saved everything we are, Yuna nodded. It is what we do. It is what we have always done. Solon led her to a private room where they could talk without being disturbed. Servants brought food and drink, though Yuna noticed that her hands were shaking too much to eat. The events of the past few days had taken a terrible toll on the Velnor leader. I have so many questions, Solon said. Where did you come from? Why were you hidden in the Silent Zone? How did you survive for 10,000 years? Yuna took a sip of water before answering. The Velnor had managed to find something that humans could safely consume, which was thoughtful of them. We had lost our homeworld. Our population had been reduced to a fraction of what it once was. We knew that we could not maintain our presence in the galaxy. We were too weak, and there were too many species who wanted to claim what little we had left. Solon nodded. She had read about the Hollow Swarm in her archives. It had been a terrible enemy, a species of living machines that consumed everything in their path. Humanity had stopped them, but at a cost that no other civilization could have paid. So we made a decision, Yuna continued. We would disappear. We would find a hidden place where no one could find us, and we would sleep until we were needed again. But before we left, we gave beacons to every species that had helped us during our darkest hour. Species that had shown us kindness when we had nothing to offer in return. The Velnori Solon whispered. Yes, your ancestors took in 50,000 human refugees. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand anything in return. They simply saw people in need and offered them shelter. My own great-grandmother was among those refugees. She was 3 years old when her parents died in the evacuation from Earth. A Velnor family raised her as their own. Solon felt tears forming in her eyes again. She had known that her people had helped aliens in the past, but she had never realized the significance of that kindness. We do not forget, Yuna said firmly. We do not forget kindness, and we do not forget cruelty. That is why we came. That is why we will always come when you call. Before Solon could respond, a communications officer entered the room with an urgent message. The Galactic Council was demanding to speak with the human fleet. They wanted explanations. They wanted assurances. They wanted to know why humanity had returned and what their intentions were. Yuna's expression hardened. Put them through. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the faces of the council representatives. There were 12 of them, each one representing a major power in the galaxy. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. A few looked angry. "Admiral Chen," said the council chairman, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the light, "the council welcomes humanity's return to the galactic stage. However, your actions in the Thesara system have caused significant concern. You have interfered in a dispute between two sovereign powers without council authorization." Yuna stared at him for a long moment before responding. "The Velnor called for help. The council refused to provide it. We did not refuse. The council must consider the broader implications of any military action. We cannot start a war every time a minor species comes under attack." "A minor species," Yuna repeated. "Is that what you call 8 billion innocent lives? Is that what you called us when we were dying to protect you from the hollow swarm?" The chairman shifted uncomfortably. "The situations are not comparable. Humanity made a choice to sacrifice themselves. We did not ask you to do that. You did not ask. But some of you made sure we could not escape." Silence fell over the council chamber. The chairman's compound eyes flickered with something that might have been fear. "I do not know what you mean," Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Before we went into cryosleep, we gathered all of our records, all of our communications, all of our intelligence reports. We have archives that the galaxy has forgotten exist. Would you like me to share some of them with the public?" She pressed a button on her wrist device, and new holographic displays appeared around the room. They showed documents, recordings, and transmissions. The council representatives stared at them with growing horror. "This is a message from the Vreth Collective to the Hollow Swarm, providing them with the coordinates of human evacuation routes. The Vreth are still a council member, I believe. This is a recording of Dominari trade vessels selling weapons to the swarm in exchange for salvage rights on human colonies. The Dominari are also council members. And this is a transmission from the council itself, ordering border stations to delay human refugee ships so that certain species could claim their territory before they escaped." The chairman raised his hands in protest. "Those records are 10,000 years old. The species involved have changed. We are not the same civilizations that existed back then." "I am sure the Velnori were told the same thing when they asked for help," Yuna replied coldly. "We will not forget, Chairman. We will never forget. And now the galaxy will remember too?" The council transmission ended abruptly. Yuna turned back to Solon, who was staring at her with a mixture of awe and concern. "You have just made enemies of the most powerful governments in the galaxy," Solon said. "We're always our enemies. They just did not know that we knew." Yuna walked to the window and looked out at her fleet, still floating in perfect formation between the station and the retreating Kethver ships. "The galaxy has lived under the rule of species who believe that power means the right to exploit the weak. That era is over. We are back now, and we have a lot of work to do." Solon joined her at the window. "What happens now? Now we rebuild. Now we help those who need help and protect those who need protection. Now we remind the galaxy what it means to be truly civilized." She turned to face the Velnor leader. "And we start by helping you rebuild your world. Consider it payment for an old debt that we have owed for far too long." For the first time in days, Solon smiled. "Thank you, Admiral. Thank you for everything." Yuna nodded. "Call me Yuna. I think we are going to be friends for a very long time." Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. But for the first time in 10,000 years, they seemed a little brighter. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Thesara. Prime, the galaxy was still recovering from the shock of humanity's return. Old alliances had crumbled. New ones were forming. And everywhere species were talking about what it meant that the legendary humans were no longer a myth. High Arbiter Solon stood on a balcony overlooking the city of Ed 3 months ago. This city had been burning. The streets had been filled with rubble and the cries of the wounded. Now construction machines hummed as they rebuilt damaged buildings. Gardens were being replanted. Children played in the parks again. The humans had kept their promise. Within days of the Kethver retreat, engineering teams from the 8th Fleet had arrived to help with reconstruction. They brought technology that the Velnor had never seen, machines that could clear debris in hours instead of weeks, medical devices that could heal injuries that would have been permanent, power generators that provided clean energy without pollution. But they did not simply give these things away. They taught the Velnor how to build them, how to maintain them, how to improve them. They were not trying to create dependence. They were trying to create equals. Admiral Chen had explained this philosophy to So-On during one of their many conversations. Gifts create obligations. Teaching creates partners. We want partners, not servants. The door behind Solon opened, and Admiral Vex stepped onto the balcony. He had recovered from the exhaustion of the battle, though his eyes still carried the weight of what they had witnessed. "Hi, Arbiter. Admiral Chen's shuttle has arrived. She is requesting permission to meet with you." Solon smiled. "Tell her I will be there in a moment." She took one last look at her rebuilding city before heading to the landing platform. The shuttle that waited there was sleek and black, bearing the same silver markings as the human warships. The ramp lowered, and Yuna Chen walked down to meet her. The human admiral looked different today, less formal. She wore simple clothes instead of her uniform, and her hair was down instead of tied back. She looked almost relaxed, which was unusual for her. "Hi, Arbiter," Yuna said with a slight bow. "Oh, I thought I told you to call me Solon." Yuna smiled. "Old habits. I came to say goodbye." Solon felt a sudden chill. "You are leaving?" "The fleet is leaving this system, yes. But we are not going far. We have established a patrol route along the borders of the Silent Zone. Any species that needs help can send a signal, and we will respond. We will also be watching for any more aggressive actions by the council members who were exposed in those records." The records that Yuna had released had caused chaos in the Galactic Council. 3 species had faced massive protests from their own citizens when it was revealed that their ancestors had betrayed humanity during the Hollow Swarm War. 2 governments had already fallen. The council itself was fractured, with some members calling for reforms and others demanding that humanity be declared a threat to galactic stability. "What will you do about the council?" Solon asked. "Nothing for now. They are too busy fighting among themselves to cause trouble. But we will be watching. If they try to hurt innocent species again, they will find that our patience has limits." They walked together through the streets of the city. Velnor citizens stopped to stare as they passed. Many of them bowed to the human admiral. Some called out words of thanks. A few children ran up to offer her flowers, which she accepted with genuine warmth. "You are a hero to my people," Solon said. "I did what anyone would do." "No, that is not true. The council could have helped us. They chose not to. You came from 10,000 years of sleep to save strangers. That is not what anyone would do." "That is what heroes do." Yuna was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "When I was young, my grandmother used to tell me stories about the Velnor, about how they saved her life. She said that kindness is the most powerful force in the universe. More powerful than weapons or ships or technology. She said that if we remember to be kind, we will never truly be lost." Ellen nodded. "She sounds like a wise woman." She died before the cryosleep began. But I think she would be happy to know that her people finally repaid the debt we owed. They reached a small plaza where a crowd had gathered. There were Velnori of all ages, from elderly scholars to tiny children. But mixed among them were human engineers and technicians, sitting together with their Velnor counterparts, sharing meals and conversations. "Look at them," Yuna said. 3 months ago, our species had not seen each other in 10,000 years. Now they eat together. They laugh together. They build together. This is what we wanted. This is why we survived." Solon watched a human child playing with a group of Velnor youngsters. They were chasing each other around a fountain, laughing with the pure joy that only children could feel. They did not care about the differences between their species. They only knew that they had found new friends. "What will you do now?" Solon asked. "Will humanity rebuild your civilization?" Yuna shook her head. "We are not ready for that yet. There are only a few thousand of us in the 8th Fleet. Our focus must be on protecting others, not on rebuilding ourselves. Perhaps someday, when the galaxy is safer, We will wake more of our people and find a new home. But for now, this is enough." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a beacon, similar to the one that Solon had activated to summon the humans, but newer and more advanced. "This is for you," Una said, pressing it into Solon's hands. "If you ever need us again, just activate it. We will come. No matter where we are, no matter what we are doing, we will come." Solon looked down at the beacon. It was such a small thing, but it represented something far larger. It represented a promise, a bond between two species that transcended time and distance. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Una placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, thank you. Your ancestors saved my family when we had nothing. Without them, I would not exist. Without the Velnor, humanity might have died out completely. You saved us first. We just took a very long time to return the favor." They embraced, two leaders from two different species, bound together by a debt of kindness that had waited 10,000 years to be repaid. That evening, Solon watched from her balcony as the Eighth Fleet departed. The black warships rose from their positions around her world and formed up in perfect formation. For a moment, they hung there against the stars, a silent reminder that humanity was watching over the galaxy once more. Then they vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind only the stars and the hope they had brought with them. Solon held the beacon in her hands and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the humans were patrolling the darkness, ready to answer any call for help. They had saved her people. They had exposed the corruption of the Council. They had reminded the galaxy that true strength was not about conquest or domination, but about protecting those who could not protect themselves. She thought about what Una had said about kindness being the most powerful force in the universe. It seemed like such a simple idea. But in a galaxy filled with species who measured power in ships and weapons, it was revolutionary. The Velnor had shown kindness to human refugees 10,000 years ago. They had not expected anything in return. They had simply seen people in need and offered them help. And because of that kindness, their entire civilization had been saved.